hope that each of us has to build a new world order in which nations and peoples with different systems and different values can live together in peace.
A world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order.
A part of that plan, of course, is to induce the gradual surrender of American sovereignty, piece by piece and step by step, to various international organizations, of which the United Nations is the outstanding but far from the only example.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
We will get to an era where we will have multiplied the intelligence and intellectual capability of the human machine civilization a billionfold compared to today. So we call it a singularity.
You're listening to Canary Cry Radio. Now here's Basil and Gons.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into Canary Cry Radio once again. This is our second episode, so we're glad you made it back if you heard the first one. If not, go back into the archives and check it out. I'm Basil.
And I'm Gons, and we just wanted to welcome everybody. If you found this through Revelations Radio Network, just want to thank the master, Chris White, for putting us on this feed. And so we are happy to be here, and hopefully we can provide some thoughts and stuff that you guys should be hearing about, or at least thinking about, I suppose.
Yeah, and if you don't know already, it's a great network, and we recommend you go and check it out and get plugged into that tribe there, and so you can keep up with us and all the rest of the great shows.
Yeah, so we're just going to jump right in. And there's a couple articles that have come out on Wired Magazine, and some of it, we're going to talk about some stuff that I guess, I was listening to Revelations Radio News with Andrew Hoffman and Tim, and they talked about it too, but, we just want to bring up the same article just because it pertains to kind of what we're about, if you will. Yeah,
last episode we talked about internet tracking and what that means and where that has the potential to go. And this article is a great example of just how deep this rabbit hole goes in regards to intelligence and what the government actually knows about you and what they have the potential to do with it.
Yeah, so the article we're talking about is in Wired Magazine. I believe the link is there in the Revelation Radio Network feed, and we'll link to it in our show notes. And it came out on March 15th, and it is called "The NSA is Building the Country's Biggest Spy Center. Watch What You Say." And it just seems like there's been a slew of articles that have come out recently that talks about, this kind of monitoring system, which is interesting that we brought that up in the first episode, and we see all these articles come out right after.
Yeah, it works out well for us. And the really interesting thing is, and we'll get into this more later when we start to explain it, but this has been happening for a decade at least. And it's just now coming out. The details are coming out. Whistleblowers are coming out and really shedding a light on just exactly how huge this program is that has been repeatedly denied by the NSA. And so it's just a very scandalous thing all around. So we'll just get right into it.
Yeah. Did you want to kind of set up the...
Sure. Yeah.
Kind of the concept of where we're going today?
Yeah. Well, what it is the NSA is now building, and I'm sure it's built now. I think it's actually happening right now. A humongous complex in Utah. And what this place is an enormous warehouse with the fastest computer in America. Well, they're working to build the fastest computing power in the world right now. Japan and China are just slightly ahead of us, but we're doing pretty good. And so, there's something like 500,000 square feet of server space filled with an unimaginable amount of data storage. And
Right.
what's happening is every piece of intelligence in the world, within NSA's reach, which basically is the world,
Right.
is being filtered through this new computing system that they have, and scanning every word, categorizing it, and finally storing every single piece of communication coming in and out of America and traveling all around the world. This includes cell phone conversations, emails, Google searches, Amazon purchases. Everything that you do that goes across a network is literally being recorded as we speak. The fact that you are listening to this station is on the books.
Yep.
So
you're blacklisted if you're listening already.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah. And so something very interesting happened to me last week, and we're recording this on Sunday, March 25th, I believe, 2012. And so last week we talked about internet tracking and how, these people, the NSA, whoever, are tracking through our cell phones, through our browsers and everything we look at. And I have basically a first-hand account, very strange happening. I was over at Douglas Hamp's house. He's the author of Corrupting the Image, Angels, Aliens, and the Antichrist Revealed. And he gave me this 5 CD set. It was Steve Quayle and Tom Horn in 2008 having a conversation about the Nephilim and giants and aliens and UFOs and all that good stuff. And so he let me borrow that. And I was listening to it, and I was listening to it in the car and for the next few days. And I was taking notes on it and just, interesting facts that I might want to look up or dig deeper into. And one of the things, because I've been looking a lot at the technocracy and transhumanist stuff, one of the things that Steve Quayle mentioned, and remember this is back in 2008, he mentioned how British Telecom had recently, and this is again 2008, come out with this chip, or they were talking about coming out with a chip called the Soul Catcher. And basically what this thing would do is they would implant it in your cranium behind your eyeball, and it would record your thoughts, everything you see, all the stuff that we're talking about here.
Exactly.
Kind of tracking you, but more so not just like, oh, we're tracking your phone. It's like, no, we're actually tracking your brainwaves, your thoughts, your dreams, everything like that.
Yeah.
And the concept was we want to implement this thing by 2025.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, wow, that's interesting. I should look into that more. So on my iPhone, which I already know is getting tracked, but it gets interesting. I was using this. There's a little notepad app that comes on your iPhones. So I opened that up and I just typed in British Telecom Soul Catcher, and I just typed that in there so I can look it up later. Not a minute later, maybe 2 minutes later, I get an email in my inbox, and again I can check this from my phone, from a gentleman named Andrew Slater, and it's probably not even a real person. And this email looks like spam, but it's interesting because it came in my inbox, and the title of the email was, "Your email has been awarded £1 million in British Telecom promo. Provide name, phone, country." And I just about fell out of my car. I was sitting in my car at the time, and I thought,
amazing.
What? I guess you can call it a coincidence, but I just highly doubt that.
If you believe in those.
Yeah. I just highly doubt that I'm listening to something on my car stereo and I type something into my phone, and immediately after that, I get an email that's suspicious, to say the least.
Suspicious. And the thing I find interesting is it says you've won $1 million in telecom.
Well,
promo.
£1 million.
£1 million in telecom promo.
Yeah.
And that phrase itself, maybe that means, the chip is $1 million and you've won a chance to put it in your head. The email is just too much.
Yeah, and provide name, phone, and country.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you, like, you already have my email address. What else do you need, You going to call me or like, hey, what's up? We saw that and I think kind of what we talked about last time about tailoring your internet.
Oh, exactly.
I mean, this is the kind of thing that we can probably expect to start seeing
exactly. If they could see that you were talking about telecom, British Telecom or whatever, which is what we're assuming happened,
Right.
and you weren't even on the internet. It wasn't like you were typing it into a browser.
No.
You weren't typing it. It was just simply an app that, for according to our knowledge of the app, is not an online app.
Right.
But obviously, there's a tracking thing in there, and it just totally makes sense. You would, who wouldn't pay an app where people think they're writing personal messages,
Right.
not being read, taking those messages and selling them to advertisers,
Yeah.
or giving them to organizations who want information on who is talking about them,
Right.
or things like that? It just totally makes sense. And this, to me, is proof of something that I already thought was happening. I already knew in my head that this was happening. But the reality that happened to you, and it was real and it was instant,
Right.
brings a whole new level of depth in my mind to this reality. And I think this is something that everybody should be thinking about now, because we've heard the conspiracies, we've seen the movies, we know Skynet and how to destroy it, but the fact that it's happening now, right now, when this gets posted, it'll be recorded in Utah, and it'll be kept there, and it'll be referred back to, I'm sure,
Right.
maybe not, but the fact is that it's happening. Now let's talk about something else with Utah. Or was there anything?
No. We can just kind of
back to the Utah Data Center, which I think is awesome, because the Utah Data Center,
Right.
such a vague name for this supercomputer that's that's collecting every piece of data in the world. But the Utah Data Center.
Well, what's interesting too, just real briefly, if I can interject, is obviously, everyone knows Utah's Mormon country, and the Mormons are one of the they have a big
emphasis,
not emphasis necessarily, but one of they're big proponents of transhumanism.
Yes,
because their theology really fits into the whole transhumanist theology. So just wanted to comment, just say that too.
Oh, definitely. I've even seen a funny little graphic on Mormonism, and shows sort of evolution, and then shows like a transhumanist at the very end of the evolution.
Right.
So anyways, back to the so benignly named Utah Data Center. One huge thing, and this is in the Wired article, and I recommend everybody go and read this. And the article is a few pages long, but bear with it. It gets really deep. But one of the biggest purposes of the Utah Data Center is, and its humongous computing power, is for code breaking. They talked about some of the best code breakers, some of the oldest code breakers, some of these old timers vouched for the center and got financing for the center and convinced the government that we need the Utah Data Center, because the computing power that's housed within those warehouses is the code breaking powerhouse that we can break 128-bit encryptions, 164-bit encryptions, these encryptions that are more or less impossible to break by any other means.
Right.
So it's just the amazing amount of power that this computer has to simply go through every single possibility to decode an encryption or a code.
Right.
Now, what this used to mean is if you just wanted to powerhouse right through a code and just try every combination until you get it, for the 128-bit encryption of today, it would literally take 1 million years or more.
Right.
But now with this computer, they are expecting to be able to do it, in a reasonable amount of time.
Right.
Which is just sounds amazing, but it should be very scary.
Yeah.
Because that means the end of all possibility of privacy.
Right.
And so now, with this idea of code breaking in mind, I want to bring up the connection with that and the soul catcher chip.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, you said, Gons, that the soul catcher chip is there to, first of all, record everything you're seeing.
Right.
And then attempt to, and record your thoughts.
Record it, change it, encrypt it into some kind of data format.
Exactly.
To store the information and turn it into visual or audible or
the
whatever.
Bioelectrical signals given off by your brain that can be read by a computer
Right.
Now, if you think about it, bioelectrical signals coming from your brain are a sort of code. You can't plug a wire into your head right now and just see your thoughts written out onto a screen because it's just apples and oranges. Your brain doesn't know how to talk to a computer in that manner.
Right.
Well, with the amount of computing power that we are just barely scratching the surface of and will just explode in the next few years,
Yeah.
the code-breaking capabilities that we are about to experience, in my belief, can and will be translated into a software or a program that will attempt to decode and look for patterns and basically de-encrypt the bioelectrical signals that create thoughts in your head. To put it another way, your brain speaks in its own code.
Right.
And now, if you apply this code-breaking thing to this chip, the chip can read your thoughts, put it onto a document, and give it to somebody to read.
Right.
And this is just, it sounds like science fiction we've been reading in books for literally 100 years.
Yeah. And, just to tie in a spiritual element to this,
Definitely.
is that, all of our thoughts, especially from the biblical perspective, of Christian perspective, we're either, it's pretty black and white as far as we're either really getting our sense of self and our thoughts and everything, they're either of God or they're not. They're from something else, some other entity, some other being. Even the thoughts that we believe are totally our own can very well be influenced by whatever entities. Mm-hmm. So when you start to think about that, and you think about this biotechnology that is emerging, this could be very much the kinds of things that we read in biblical prophecy, where the demons and these fallen angels and stuff will have an opportunity to manifest physically in a way that perhaps they haven't been able to for thousands of years.
Well, precisely.
And and we read the Genesis 6 account that they mated with women and all this stuff. We don't know what that looked like. There could have been technology very similar to this that created, Peter talks about, in the book of Peter, it talks about how these fallen angels left their abode. That means that they were spiritual, they were non-physical, and somehow they were able to become physical. They left their abode. They broke some barrier that they weren't supposed to. And so what I see in all this technology that's emerging and the fusing of the biological and the technological is opening up doorways, opening up portals, basically. An opportunity for these demonic entities to just flood the earth,
Oh, absolutely. And you think about another spiritual concept, which is rebellion is like witchcraft.
Right.
Now, rebellion being, imposing your own will, basically.
Yeah.
Not submitting. And it has a connection with trying to be like God, trying to be your own God. Well, now we think about this. Well, who's the only person who can read our minds right now?
Ourselves.
It's ourselves and God.
And God, yeah.
And God knows. But now, following this transhumanism trend, we have humans reading the minds of other humans.
Yeah.
Which is more or less
playing God,
taking the place of God. And on the other hand, we are able to read people's thoughts, receiving biological signals. What is stopping the chip from being able to send biological signals back? Right. Being advertising, being mind control, being whatever, literally putting thoughts into people's heads. Who's the only person who can divinely inspire right now? Right. It's God. Yeah. They are playing God, reading our minds. Well, okay, they are attempting to make this happen.
Yeah. And very tangibly, though.
Exactly, very tangibly.
They're very close.
It's happening right now. The fact that it's coming out, and you always know that by the time something comes out, it's been around.
It's been around for years, yeah.
So the fact that we're even hearing about it is very scary. To the fact that it probably might already exist.
It probably does to some extent.
So back to the thing where now we have entities playing God, reading our thoughts, and then putting thoughts into our head. how much more? What is left after that?
Yeah. We really lose our sense of, I mean, we're made in the image of God. If that's true, and we both believe that it's true, then as these things begin to happen, and the transhumanist conversation comes in, because it changes what it means to be human. Because if they can, like you said, if they can keep or track of what we think, what we see, all this stuff, and they can even manipulate at a genetic level what we're made up of, this is very scary, because
exactly the line between creation and machine are blurring heavily.
Yeah.
We are born one thing and we make ourselves something else, which is which is a direct violation of a lot of what believers think is meant to be. And that's a big issue with a lot of non-believers.
Yeah.
Is they call believers, I don't know, radical, too traditional, conservative, fundamentalist, not wanting to
holding back progress.
Exactly, holding back the human race because of their primitive thoughts of a creator.
Right.
Well, I understand that. I completely understand how somebody could think that.
Yeah.
But to an extent, it's not even to me, being a believer, it really isn't all about the spiritual. I mean, it's not the God thing is in addition to the very voice that speaks inside of me saying that's wrong inherently.
Right. Right.
And I think a lot of non-believers do feel that is very scary, and they say, well, I don't want to hold everybody back. And so they keep that inside. They say, there's something really weird about this. I'm not really sure. But that voice inside of you telling that this is wrong, that's God.
Yeah. The objective moral foundation to which we make decisions, ethical and moral decisions, is something even the Bible talks about. Is everyone has it. It's just a matter of acknowledging it or not.
Exactly. The fact that non-believers would even make it a thought in their head that they need to determine if it's ethical or not is evidence to an absolute moral absolute.
Objective moral values that are independent and binding.
Exactly. And so, that's just what I have to say to people about that, because it really is not a believer and non-believer issue. The ethical things are not just about Christians and non-Christians.
Yeah.
It is a human problem. And so to divide that is to make an unnecessary divide. We need to look at it in a full spectrum of the human race, because we are a humongous diversity of different beliefs, and at the same time, everybody would think that something's wrong with this.
Yeah.
At some core level.
Yeah.
That they need to overcome. So.
Yeah. Well, jumping back to the kind of the genetic stuff, people that are proponents of evolution will tell you that, things happen slowly. Things happen at this micro level, chance plus time, And so this transhumanist thing plus the genetic thing and all the technological stuff coming out is really changing the speed of that. And just to get an idea of how this can happen, and it's not like, oh, I'm going to have a child and this child is going to be different, because no, this can happen to us in our lifetime. Because, Tom Horn uses this example all the time. Tom Horn was not born diabetic, but he became diabetic, right? So something in his genetic makeup changed. I mean, he carried the gene, but something triggered it to actually affect him.
Yeah.
Same thing with cancer. You're not born with cancer. You might be more susceptible to it, but something changes in your internal makeup that causes those things to happen.
Yeah.
So very much this can happen, at the genetic level in our lifetime if we consume the wrong thing, if we consume without knowing it, so.
Genetic changes already happen. Plants genetically modified, animals being genetically modified, everything's being genetically modified. To think that we are unable to genetically modify ourselves without even knowing it is just ignorance.
Yeah,
if
totally.
Don't think that your genetics could be changed without your knowing. You're being ignorant to the facts. We change the genetics of animals without them knowing. They don't know that. It's in the food we give them. It's in injections. They don't know what's going on. And it's not even a question of the possibility of this happening.
Right.
The question is, number one, what is happening to us?
Right.
Number two, why is it being done without our consent?
Yeah.
If it indeed is. And three, if they asked for our consent,
We're going to say,
what would we say? And that's a question for everybody.
that's true. I would probably say no, but
I would hope so.
actually, let me dabble in that a little bit now. I think this also, and this is a conversation that's been brought up a lot, but it really ties into the Antichrist, the mark of the beast.
Definitely.
These things, and the reason why I think the Bible is so cool that we live in these times, and we can talk about it without having any fear is obviously because we know kind of how it's going to work out. But, when we talk about the Antichrist and stuff, we're not trying to fearmonger anybody. Oh, the Antichrist is coming, so go hide in a bunker. But, that's not the point. But what I wanted to say is that, back in Genesis 10, it talks about how Nimrod, it's actually Genesis 10:8. It says, "And Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth." And that word, a mighty one, is Gibor, Giborim. It's the same root as these mighty men of old. So something in him changed. Something happened to him. He didn't just become, there's something genetic that changed in him that made him into this mighty man.
Yeah.
The same word, Giborim, is used in Genesis 6, and it talks about, after the Nephilim, they were the mighty men of old.
Yeah.
Same word. So it implies some kind of genetic
Some sort
tinkering.
Yeah.
And this is right before, obviously, the Tower of Babel and all that stuff. And isn't it interesting that, in the Tower of Babel, everyone was speaking the same language, and we're kind of going back to that with these big big computers speaking the same language, zeros and ones, or ones and zeros, whatever you
Being
call it.
able to translate everything into
readable language. So
encryption, brainwaves, everything can be
everything
translated.
is broken down into digital language format. And, that's really interesting and very kind of scary when you think about how much this quote-unquote computing power has an effect on where we're going. And, I would imagine that, behind it all, there's some kind of agenda going on that is beyond just, we're going to try to track you or keep track of what's going on.
Yeah, and here's another way to think about it. Even if you don't believe that this computer and these capabilities were created with a sinister intent, you have to know that now that it does exist, the powers that be are realizing what they can do with it.
Right.
So that's a big issue that comes up with people too. They say, I understand that maybe some shady things are happening, but it's hard for me to believe that, this is all so orchestrated. Well, personally, I think a lot of it is orchestrated.
Oh, yeah.
Most of it is orchestrated. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But my point is, even if it's not orchestrated at the beginning of the creation of this technology, you better know it.
Yeah.
That now that they know their capabilities, you are ignorant to think that there is not a man out there who's going to take control and use it for things that are very questionable.
And this is historically tangible, too.
Oh, yeah.
You look back in history, even just in the 19th century or the 20th century, huge progress of technology. And what do? We build nukes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like we had to build nukes,
Yeah.
but we did. And we had, with any, it's that whole Spider-Man thing, like with great power comes great responsibility. And on our own, I don't think we're responsible enough
It's
to.
not been very good.
Yeah, exactly. So it's this idea that this whole notion that, there might be a conspiracy, there might not, all this stuff. I don't think, and this is important to note and to keep in mind, is that I don't think there are individuals that are putting this, whole facility together that are sitting there going, rubbing their hands like, ooh, we're going to get the human race now, I don't think it's like that. There is a pecking order.
Exactly.
And there's many layers of deception going on from the top all the way to the bottom.
Yeah.
And, why would anybody want to speak out against it, something like this, especially if they're employed? This is the same thing as a scientific dictatorship.
Exactly. Well, I'll say right now, if you're listening after this, when we're done, go to the link that's in the show notes, read the whole thing, get all the details. But the fact is that in this article, it's talking about how it's been happening forever. They talk about these data stations that are located all over America that for years and years and years, they've been filtering through American phone calls, emails, and other data. And then we learn about all the advancements of that. All the whistleblowers come out. And then what happens? We'll put another link in there. And this is a video of the guy denying everything. And he's not even, he's denying everything.
Everything.
And his excuse is, no, the technology for that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
No, we don't have the capabilities to do that. No, this is not Star Wars. We can't read your emails. What are you saying?
We need a warrant.
Exactly.
We need the CIA and the FBI handles those things.
Oh, exactly. And it's just such deception. The fact that he's expecting us to think that they just can't read our emails, or they just don't have the systems in place to listen to our calls is just insulting.
It is.
And it is way too suspicious, and it definitely speaks to the levels of deception that are involved in this whole program. And we already know you can't listen to these people.
Yeah.
You cannot listen to these people. You need to listen to the facts. These people, the guy who wrote the article did his research. There are people testifying to this who saw just how wrong this was, left the NSA, left a huge career in the NSA, and came out and said, this is happening, and it is wrong, and it is unconstitutional for whatever that is worth. And why? Why would he give all that up if it was just fake and just make it up just to cause a ruckus or something?
Yeah. I think we're reaching a level where it's really impending on the individual boundaries of ethics and morals.
Exactly.
Where, in the past, let's say, I've been listening to a lot of stuff on giants. Let's say 100 years ago, you're in archaeology, you go to a university, you get your degree, you find a giant skeleton. Mm-hmm. And, you want to report on it, but everyone says, it gets confiscated or whatever, and they say, if you report on it, your career is done.
Oh, absolutely.
Who in the right mind would say, I'm going to fight the system, and I know what I found is a giant, and there's no point in doing that.
Well, because they're going to throw you in the loony bin.
Exactly.
It's historically happened, and it's going to keep happening.
Yeah, it's risking your family, your income, everything else. Why would anyone do that? But I think it's getting to a point where it's starting to tip over so badly that people are just saying, enough is enough.
Well, it's also, why would you do that, especially if it's not true?
Right, exactly.
Why would you do that if you hadn't actually find the giant, but why would you give up everything just to say you had? And it's the same with this. He had a great job. He was at the top.
Yeah.
And he had a great life, government taking care of everything.
Yep.
And gives it up because it is so wrong. Now, why give it up if it's not that way?
Yeah.
And so it's just, there's so many levels here to think about.
Yeah.
And go read the article, go watch the video, and take a closer look at this yourself.
And I think it speaks into the power of truth, really, mm-hmm. because this same thing that this guy who wrote the article, which I think his name's James Bamford, he's trying to enlighten us with, well, enlighten may not be the proper terminology, but just inform us of what's going on. And he's risking stuff. The people that have come out and the whistleblowers are risking stuff. The same exact thing happened in Jesus' time.
Oh,
when Jesus rose from the dead and he walked around. Why would you go kill, like,
Why would
profess
you do that?
and say, no, I know he died, and I know he rose from the dead, and I saw him, I talked to him. Who in the right mind would really say that if they come at them and say, if you continue saying that, we're going to kill you?
Exactly, and it's the same thing. I mean, yeah, you just hit the nail right on the head there. It doesn't make sense that it would be a lie.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. And not even that, but there's so much evidence of its truth.
Yeah.
And so people, my biggest thing is that it's so easy to hear these words and know in your head that there's something shady going on.
Yeah.
That, yes, everything we do is being recorded. Wow, that's some really interesting information. But it is a whole nother thing to actually grasp the fact that it is happening right now to you, and it's real. It is absolutely real. It's not just a fun thing to talk about.
Well, what do you think people should do about it, as far as, what kind of actions can we take in not just informing people, but what would you say is an important action that is tangible that we can really...
Well, I think the biggest thing is to spread the truth. There's no way for us to escape being recorded. That's just what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But spreading the truth, let me tell you, it's in the article. When this first started happening, people made a huge uproar about it. It was a big deal.
Right.
And Congress shut it down. Or so they say.
Yeah.
But, and then I think it happened again 4 years later. There was a huge problem with it. People were finding out about it. They were making a big deal, spreading the truth. And then Congress shut it down again.
Right.
Or ordered it to be shut down. But now, that's what needs to happen. That is the power of numbers in the people. And it's happening all over the world in a lot of different contexts. And this is just one thing that people need to know about.
Yeah.
And that is the way to fight it. Truth will always prevail. And strength in numbers is the way that it's going to happen.
Right.
Unless there's this facility, they talk about the security system, and unless there's some guy who is just a ninja of all ninjas to go in
They
and
already probably have transhumanists guarding the facility.
It would not surprise
Some
me.
Nephilim roaming around the front complex.
Yeah, exactly.
Waiting for anyone trying to break in.
Right.
Just eating them.
Right. It's just amazing to think about.
Oh, I think it's funny, the yottabytes and exaflops, septillions and undecillions. I mean, these are words I've never even heard of before.
No, yeah. The article talks about the actual vastness of the computing power and the data storage.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, I tried my best to comprehend a yottabyte in my head. It's YOTTA
Yep.
byte. And it is beyond my mental capabilities to actually picture the amount of storage that a yottabyte is. And it's just...
I don't even know what an exaflop is. What's an exaflop?
I think those were referring to the speed at which the data can be transferred. Because what they're doing is they're going to transfer all the data they already have into this facility. And that's what they were talking about, the computing power, that it's so astronomically fast that, they are just making up new words for it. So there we go.
And we got cell phones going off. They're tracking us down already right now. Well, I think we kind of hashed out some of the things that we wanted to say as far as that's concerned. And, we can have this conversation. We can keep going with this conversation for much longer, but, for the sake of time and
absolutely. And know that we are going to come back to it. This is a serious thing that we're going to be talking about. We'll try not to inundate you with it every single episode, but it is something important to us. It should be important to you. So I really appreciate you guys tuning in again for our second episode of Canary Cry Radio. And
and I just want to close it out by saying, talk to your friends, talk to your family, about these things. It's not the easiest topic to bring up, but like Basil said, it's really important to just inform people with the truth. And this kind of information can be a great way to evangelize to people. And this is something that I'm very passionate about, is using these things that are happening today. And I think this is partly why we even started Canary Cry Radio, was to have a platform where we discuss modern things that are happening and use it as a platform to speak the gospel into people's lives, because the church isn't going to necessarily do that for you. Exactly. The church isn't going to have a legitimate, unified corporate institutional response to these super, Yoda-bite computers.
Exactly.
In fact, they'll probably install it into the church system before it's, so, just keep that in mind as far as and opportunities to have conversations with coworkers, or friends, or family, or whoever.
And do your research. And the more you do, the more you will realize that everything that is happening lines up perfectly with biblical
prophecy.
Yeah, thank you. Biblical prophecies. It's
maybe
all,
you need a chip in your brain too.
Maybe.
Actually, I probably do too.
So all of this stuff, it's in the Bible. It's happening now. Use it, learn it, make sure to read the articles. We'll try to post some verses too, so you can do your research and know, because that's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
You got to know both sides.
Right.
And so that's what we're going to try to bring you here every week, is what's happening, why you need to know it, and the biblical and spiritual parts about it, and what it means for your eternity.
Cool. Well.
All right.
See you guys next time.
Thanks again.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Canary Cry Radio. If you're interested and want to know more, please go to canarycryradio.com. Look us up on Facebook at facebook.com/canarycryradio, or look us up on Twitter.